I wanted to share a story that happened this weekend that to me is one of those things about this collective consciousness, whether like, we've talked so much, like, what is it? Is it love? Is it energy? Is it, is it consciousness? Is it awareness? What is it? What is it? How is this thing still, or is it all just coincidence? So I have one for you. So we're going to talk about tiny gifts today. It's going to come up. So just stick that in your mind. So I was up visiting my parents in Canada and we went to some little like tchotchke shop and I found all these tiny little metal bluebirds. They're really, really cute. And they had this little card. It said little bluebird of happiness. And they had these little bags. And I was like, oh, these are perfect tiny gifts. So I bought a whole bunch of them. Then I went on my contemplative retreat and I gave one to each person who came on the retreat. I put it on their pillowcases. So when they showed up, their little bluebird of happiness was there. So I'm packing now to go to Texas and I'm putting everything in my bag. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to bring one of these little bluebirds of happiness with me. I don't know. Like maybe I'll give it to my friend whose mom is sick and, whatever. I'll figure that out. I just pack it in my bag. So then I do my grief and loss class. And this woman comes up to me afterwards. Uh, well, lots of people did. I want to tell you all of them, but I won't. I'll tell you this one. And she's really, really crying. And she said, I just lost my mom exactly a week ago. I think it might be on the same day your sister died. And I was like, it didn't match up. But she said, and just like you, like I came anyway. I thought that I shouldn't come. I was going to cancel. And I told the organizers I was going to cancel. And they said, just come anyway. Like you should just come, bring your husband, bring your son, we'll put you in this separate guest house. So I did that. So I came and I came to your class and I just loved it. And thank you so much, blah, 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 done. So that night I'm thinking, oh, I think I want to write a little note to her. I'm just going to give her like a little tiny note because I travel with tiny gifts and then I had all these little pens but I didn't have time because it was really packed. So one morning I just grabbed the little bluebird of happiness and I stuck it in my pocket. And I wasn't even sure I would recognize her if I saw her because I was meeting so many people and it's not one of my strong suits. So the next morning I go into the dining room and I see this woman. I was like, are you Deanne? And she's like, yeah. And I said, this is for you. And I just like opened up her hand. I put the little bluebird of happiness there in there and closed her hand. And her eyes got all teary. She didn't even look at it. And her husband and her son or whatever. And she's like, thank you. And introduced me to her husband and son, whatever. I walk away. She comes up to me later and she says, I opened up my hand and I show this to my husband and he goes, how did she know about the little bluebird of happiness? And Deanne goes, I don't know. And apparently her mom, who just died, always talked about the little bluebird of happiness to the extent that even the husband was like, why did she give you a little bluebird of happiness? So that is a true story with zero embellishment. I don't know this woman, Deanne. I don't know her last name. I don't know if I'll ever see her again. But all the way from Canada to Mexico to Austin, Texas, this little bluebird of happiness was meant to go into Deanne's hands because her mom was dying. And this was going to be this. Oh, sorry. The other thing she told me when she came to me crying the first time, her mom had only been dead a week. And she said, when my dad died, he came to me a lot, but my mom hasn't come to me at all. And I said, well, it's only been 1 week, give it time. So that was the other thing is she felt that then her mom came to her through the, I mean, I don't even know what a little bluebird of happiness is until I bought these stupid little things. Have you ever heard of this little bluebird of happiness? Yes to Tracy and yes to Carrie. I have never heard that phrase, that word, anything about it. But there we go. So I don't know, coincidence? I think collective consciousness. So there we go. Those are some things.
I think those kinds of things happen a lot. I think sometimes we don't notice them though. Even like random people you run into or things they mention to you and it like plays into something much bigger for you than they realize. So I mean, yeah, I think that happens a lot.
Yeah, I think so too. And that is a really perfect segue into the chant that we're going to start with. And then we'll go from there. So the chant is called just the Purnam chant, Purnam, Purnam. I'll send you intel on it so you don't have to worry too much about it right now. You can just listen. And this is a chant that's about wholeness. And the translation is basically this is whole, that is whole. When you take the whole away from the whole, what's left is still whole. So at first you might be like, wait, hang on. Carrie, looks like you want to say something before we dive in.
Speaking of synchronicity, I went to my chanting group on Sunday and I've never heard this chant before. And the woman who does the chanting group, Sweet Home is her name, we did this chant. She's like a Sanskrit Hindu chant expert yogi person. And
Amazing.
oh my God.
Amazing. I love it. I love it. So a really good way to describe this is even looking at the screen right here. Like we've got 7 people on the screen. This is like a whole group. Then Naomi has to go off to work. Oh, and we're each whole individually, right? Then let's say Naomi has to go off to work. So the whole is taken away from the whole. What's left is still whole, meaning our group is still whole, even if we're missing a member. And Naomi, I just used your name because you might be leaving early. Naomi is also still whole. So I'll come back to then, yeah, synchronicity, collective consciousness of this one as well, besides what Carrie said. So it just says the word Purnam a bunch of times. I'll chant it 3 times. Just sit back and listen, close your eyes. Dina, if you want to turn your screen off, this would be a good time for it. It won't take very long, but, or at least close your eyes, look away, whatever. Here we go. Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vaishishyate Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vaishishyate Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vaishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So that's the chant. And I think I've told you this before. I always have this feeling I've like just said this exact same thing to you last week because since I teach this course, like, so always please save me from myself. If I started on a story and you're like, Molly, you literally told us that last week, please stop me. But back in the day, before people had iPhones and such, and I would travel around to teach therapy courses, sometimes students would ask me to later sing these things into their answering machines so that they could remember them. So there was one of my students, Carla Helbert, and I actually recommended her book to you. She has a book called Yoga for Grief and Loss. She has another one that is The Chakras and Grief. And she has another one that is something like grief and loss in autism or something like that, something related to autism. But yoga and grief and loss is a really good one. She also does a ton of cool work and a ton of good stuff online in the realm of grief. So she's really lovely. Way back then, she asked me to sing this into her answering machine. It became like her mantra. So we didn't have the internet back then. She didn't look it up, whatever. She just chanted it, chanted it, chanted it. Then she told me later. So actually she told me, and then she said this on like a podcast interview. You can listen to her telling the story in her own words. She got pregnant. She chanted it all through her pregnancy. Then she had her baby, she chanted it like mantra, came to her during her birthing. Then her baby was born with a brain tumor and stayed alive just for 1 year. And this was like her solace and her chant all the way through that process. And at the end of it, but she still didn't know what it meant. She just knew that it felt right to sing. And at the end of that whole process, now there was much more availability to find out, what these chants meant. And she looked it up, and that's what she found. This is whole, that is whole. When you take the whole away from the whole, what's left is still whole. So that also is, to me, a really beautiful and like goosebumpy story of, one, how these Sanskrit mantras can really touch people, but then also how it, it just seems like it was the right thing for her and really mirrored what she went through with the loss of her baby. So the Purnam chant, it's a beautiful, lovely one. All right. Anything else from you all before we get started about something that came up over the weekend or the week since I've seen you, or yeah, anything at all? And I'm just, hold on, sorry. Or anything that's on your mind, or no, we good? All right. Okay. Vanessa, did you have something?
Oh yeah, just real quick, when we talked about the celebration of life, and you said you didn't really like that terminology, or like was just trying to get clarification on, like, it's not.
I like the term celebration of life. Probably what I was saying is it was in response to what you said, that you were like, it was a celebration, but it was also really sad, right? So I think probably what I wanted to reflect back, that is, we do say celebration of life. That's beautiful. When I think about Burns, the woman that my last person that I helped to die, and being able to do like a grief ritual with her when she was actually alive was one of the most profound things ever. And I think, like, I would start to think about that when we know someone's already terminally ill. Can we do like a celebration of their life that they can actually attend? Right? That's just something to think about. And then the other piece is twofold. One is that after my sister's celebration of life and all of that, then my brother wanted to have a party at her house. And he was like, and then we're just going to be like celebrating. We're just going to play music. We're going to have a fire, everything that Aaron did. And there's not going to be any crying. But that's my brother. And I was like, well, I mean, it's like people might cry, like they might cry. So I think that's like an important piece too, is to recognize that even if you have this idea, like, then we're all going to go down to the pub and it's just going to be happy, like you can't stop people's process from crying. And then also when I write end of life care plans with people, or when people say like, don't cry while I'm gone, or I ask people when they're writing their end of life care plan, and they'll put in it like, don't cry for me when I'm gone. I'm always like, take that out. Like they can't help but crying. And then you're like admonishing them not to, like, don't do that. And then people are usually like, this light bulb goes off and they're like, oh yeah, like, why would I tell someone to do that? And it's the same way in grief when we say that, like people would say to me, especially about my little brother, they'd go, Tim wouldn't want you to be so sad. And I would start laughing and I'd go, I think Tim would be super offended if I was not this sad and more, right? Or if it was my big sister, I'd go, I think Aaron would want me to be doing whatever I was doing, right? So that whole idea about don't cry, or that the person wouldn't want to see you like this, I just don't feel that it's true. I feel like anyone who loves me would want me to go through the process that I have to go through. And as a matter of fact, one of my mentors, and maybe I told you this already, but my most important mentors, who also just died, but she was with me throughout Aaron's illness. And when Aaron died, she sent me a text and she said, now suffer as you must. Now suffer as you must. And I will never forget that. And it was so profound because she was so loving and I knew that she was always there for me. But literally, she was saying, now you're going to suffer. Have at it. And I'm with you. And I feel like that's a much deeper and more realistic thing to say to someone.
I actually love that. I'm going to use that.
Yeah, awesome, Naomi. And actually, I'm going to write it down because I feel like this weekend I saw it in something, and I'm wondering if there's like I'm wondering if it actually comes out of scripture or something like that. So I wanted to look it up and see if it comes from scripture potentially. I just heard it as Liz's words, but I'm curious if it comes from someplace else. But yeah, use that, right? And it doesn't have to be as like perfunctory as that necessarily, like suffer as you must, and I'll always be with you, right? But it's a very brave thing to say. And I think that that bravery is something that I really appreciated in the depths of my anguish in losing all my family or so many of my family members in such a short period of time. And all of them in what would be called out of order deaths. Like all three of them were out of order deaths. So yeah, anyway, it felt more realistic. And I think that's what we want is people being real with us. Real authentic you. Like each one of us, when we do this work, we're going to come at it a little bit differently because we have very different personalities. So everything that I'm teaching you, I do think are best practices, and then they're all going to be filtered through exactly who you are. And that's really what people need. Yeah, Dina.
I was just going to say that I've been listening to the audiobook that you recommended, the book It's Okay That You're Not Okay. And that just
Mhm.
like drives what you're saying, like it drives it home, like it's been really interesting. And like I'm learning a lot, just like when you think you know what to say, like she just drives it home that you don't
Yeah,
know, it's crazy land, and just support them
she's
in moving
really good.
through grief.
Yep, exactly. And hopefully at some time or another, when I do put these two courses back onto my website and onto my calendar, you will join in. And yeah, they're half price because you took this class. They're relatively inexpensive. I think they're like one's like $100 and the other one's like $90, something like that. But in the Holy State of Grief, we go way deeper into all of that. And I will say that, and maybe also I said this too, but I always say when I teach that class, if you write nothing else down in this class, or I gave a little like 2-hour lecture at the well, I guess discussion at the retreat. Same thing. I said, just write this one thing down and then you can write whatever notes you want. Here it is. You cannot stop their suffering. You absolutely cannot stop their suffering. So stop trying. Get rid of every single thing you think you're going to say or do with the intention of they will stop suffering. And then once you have completely wiped that out, then you get to look with authentic, like critical thinking and heart. If I can't do any of those things, then what can I do? If I can't say anything, I can't do anything, then what can I do? And that I'll ask that as a real question, like what comes to your mind? There's nothing you can say, literally nothing you can say, and there's nothing you can do that is going to stop this person from suffering. Yeah, Carrie.
Listen. Just
Yeah.
be there, be a presence.
Yeah, I would say even more, not that listening is wrong, but even more, just be there, be a presence, and let them know you'll be there. I love you. I love you. I love you. This sucks. This is so hard. I just want to be there with you. I will come over to your house and watch you while you fold your laundry. I will come over to your house and lie down in the bed with you. I will watch, 6 hours of the Great British Baking Show with you. Like you can't do anything.
Do you know, I always think about, I mean, I love Obama and I was always following him. And when Sandy Hook happened, he met with the parents and he just said to every parent, he just said, tell me about your child, like of all the kids that died. And he
Yeah.
listened to every parent talk about their child.
Totally, absolutely. That's actually even one of my tricks, like now for like if you're on social media and someone writes, oh, my dad died, but everyone is like, oh, sorry for your loss. Blah, blah, blah. I'll tell you one thing, this might be just me, well, probably just me. Do not put a saddie face emotion, like emoticon or whatever. Like that drove me nuts throughout my grief. Like if I would express something and then someone would just put that crying thing on, I was like, just don't, like, just, or some person wrote RIP and I was like, really? And I just like hid their comment. So like if you're at a loss for something useful, then just do nothing. But what a trick that I've learned for myself is I immediately say, tell me your dad's favorite meal, or tell me, what your brother loved to do the most, or tell me an awesome memory of your mom. And really all the person is putting out there, like, I lost my mom, or I miss her so much, or whatever. And that's always my response on there, is something specifically about them. Just tell me something about them. Again, when we're really really going into grief work, which I don't want to spend much more time on right here, even though, as I said, it's always interwoven through end of life work. Like you can't have them separate. But the other thing I say, and I don't even think I remembered to say this weekend, is don't make a grieving person work. So it's always timing too, right? Like there would have been times early on, perhaps, that if someone was like, well, tell me more about Tim, I'd be like, that sounds exhausting. Like he was awesome. That's all I can tell you. I don't have any more for you. Right. So because grieving people are just wrung out, right? And crotchety. So yeah. So I always say, don't make them work and don't interview them, which is also work. Or people used to say to me, and then I'll stop, but people would go, how are your parents doing? And to me, that is just like the most overwhelming. It actually made me mad. What I wanted to say, how the fuck do you think they're doing? What's your best guess? Give me your best guess and I'll tell you if it's true. Or like, it just seems so much to put on me to answer for them, to like, what do you think? They just lost their oldest sister and their youngest son. How do you think they're doing? What would, anyway, I don't have to keep saying it. But like those kinds of things that we don't even recognize, they seem totally natural and normal. So the other side of that as a grieving person is we have to get over ourselves too, right? Otherwise, like we're mad at everybody. So there has to be some meeting in the middle, but we can just get better. Like, don't ask those kinds of like open-ended questions to a person who's grieving, or like, how are you doing? Like,
I don't think society really teaches us that though.
no,
Like it's hard because you don't really know what to say and you feel like you have to say something.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So we'll definitely get deeper into that.
yeah.
In this dog, in, out. The other thing I would say about Burns, and I think I already told you, I can say her name because she was an influencer and she published a lot of her death and dying on Facebook. Like if you are on Facebook, you could look her up and watch what she was like talking. And it was in my end of life care plan that I said I would like help in recording my death as much as possible. I would like to be speaking to the public throughout my dying process. So anyway, she did that. And so I can use her. That's why I say her name so freely. But one of the things that I know that her family loved and took away, and then they would joke about it, until she got really sick and wasn't joking anymore. But I taught them just to put right now onto the end of it. So how are you doing right now? That is actually a question that I could have answered, or that people can answer. How are you doing? That seems really hard. Or I taught Shanakai, Aaron's son, because people would always say, how's your mom? And he'd go, great, great, great. And I was like, why are you saying great? He was like, because I'm 12. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. And I said, well, just always start with the words right now. And then you can say how she's doing. And so it goes both ways, right? We can ask, how are you doing right now? But also when someone asks us and it feels overwhelming, we can start with right now, whatever. All right. You good on that for right now? For right now? Okay. All right. Duffel bag. Oh, no. Before duffel bags, I wanted to just go back for a quick moment on the thing that I sent you before, because we're going to go more deeply into ritual in general, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the celebration of life situation. And it said, if you are planning a memorial or a virtual memorial. And what I wanted to remind you of is that in our job, I believe it's not my job or my place to plan someone's thing for them unless that's actually what they wanted. But I can be a really good listener and like someone to bounce ideas off of, like reflect things back. So I'll give you some examples. If someone says to me, I don't know, I was thinking maybe everybody could have an opportunity to come up and talk for a little bit if they wanted to. I might say, that's a great idea to give people an opportunity. Have you thought about how long it's going to take? Like how long each person would talk for? Do you want to put any limits on that? Or have you thought about if there's anyone who might say something that feels untoward in some way or doesn't strike you well? And then we get to talk about that. And then we can say, there's lots of different solutions. I said, well, what if you have like 5 people that actually are getting up and talking, and you tell them that they have 3 minutes each, and you would want them to time themselves. And then maybe later you have some sort of an open mic. That could be one. Or, anyway, like that, right? So maybe a person says to me, I don't know, I was thinking that it'd be really cool to do like to have a bunch of photos and to have them like, I don't know, playing on a video or something. And so now what might you say to that person? Because they're a mess. They're planning so many things, right? So I'll start you. My first thing would be, well, that's a really great idea. Have you thought about what? It's not a trick question, Naomi.
Who might contribute photos?
Right. Who's going to contribute the photos? Who's going to actually do it? Are you going to do that? Are you going to put together a video slideshow? Like, do you have that bandwidth? No. Okay, then who is? And how are they going to get all the photos? Yeah. Or they say, I'm thinking it'd be cool to have some music going, maybe like having a couple of songs that my mom really liked, just sort of playing. And I say, that's a great idea. Have you thought about what?
What song, maybe what songs she liked, or
So what's actually going to be on that playlist? Same question, who's going to do it, put it together? And then other question, what do you know about the sound system of the place that you're going? Is there going to be a sound system there? And is there someone that can run that sound system? Right. So these are the kinds of things that people have this idea of how it's going to go, but you get to get a little bit more on point about it so that it can actually happen. Like we're like the actualizers.
Mhm.
All right. Carrie.
Yeah, seems like when you think about it more, there's a lot of tasky stuff that,
So many.
yep, just like someone's got to do the tech stuff and somebody's got to contact everyone and compile things. And who wants to
Right.
do that?
Right. And then there might be people in the family that really, they like that. They want to be the photographer. They want to be the whatever. So that's the other thing I would say, give everyone a role. Give everyone a role. And if there's somebody who's like, they're really, they're not a public type of person. They don't want to be interacting with people. What could be their role? Do you want to have like a little program? Maybe that person like makes the program. Now they're not actually having to interact with anybody. So to that, I just wanted to share and sort of go over it with you. Oh, wait, did I? Sorry, you can see all my email. I wanted to just show you, remind you of a couple of these other specific ideas that I think are helpful. These came from one of my clients. I wanted to find a redacted one, and I'm sorry that I didn't. So it does have some referencing to the person, but I also know the person, and I don't think that there would be a problem with it. So A couple other things to think about. The celebration could have two parts. One that is like a specific time, and the second one that's a gathering of someplace casual. So that's something I always let people know. It's nice for you to have like whatever's the formal thing and then an informal thing following. And you don't have to go to the informal one. You can if you feel like it, but you don't have to. Second, you can let people know ahead of time what, if any, food or flowers you want them to bring, or if there's something else very specific that you want them to bring or not. All right, so just letting people know everybody wants to help. Everybody wants a role. So giving them that is really helpful. This is a really important one. You should definitely let people know how you want to be received that day. Do you want long hugs from everyone? Do you want people to say, I'm sorry? Do you want just quick, loving hugs? Letting people know ahead of time what you need is really helpful to them as much as to you. This is just to the point Vanessa said, people are not sure how to act or what to say. So you're doing them a favor by letting them know. I know for me, receiving several people at once who want to console me is way too much. So then this woman, when she put out the invitation, she included all of these things. And she did include, I do not want to be hugged. I don't want to say I'm sorry. We all know what you're there for. Right? Like that's that. You can create a playlist, including some of your loved ones' music to have people playing as they're coming in. You might want a notebook for people to sign in and write whatever they would like to. You could also do something like ask people to bring an altar item or a favorite picture of your son to put on a co-created altar in the space. You could also have index cards or Post-it notes where people could write something and stick it on a wall for others to read. And this is probably the most important part. Having active embodied participation is a real gift to people who attend. And that is true. People just don't know what to do with these things. Someone will want to make a slideshow that you can project during the ceremony. Select photos on the wall or at the entry are also good ideas. So if they don't want to do a slideshow, just right at the entry or just put some photos on the wall. Ask whoever you think might like to talk to make sure what they say is around X number of minutes, and maybe include just one or two of those rehearsed ones. A prayer, a reading, or a song is a good way to start and end the celebration. You can invite others to come up and talk or share memories as well. Just remind them to be mindful of how long they're speaking and how many others might want to share. Making a very simple program helps people know what is happening and to relax. I mentioned tiny gifts. If you wish, some tiny tangible thing that people can take away, maybe a quote or a photo of your child on a small laminated paper, maybe just a polished stone, an origami crane, any simple thing. I also suggested you could have people make mandalas with flower petals. They could do that outside or in the indoor space that you use. This gives people something to do that is connecting and healing in the sense that ritual helps to contain experiences. And we're going to talk a lot about ritual. One more and then one that's not here. Finally, I suggested ending the celebration with something light, a song, a chant, a cheer, dancing to a favorite song. It's a way to shift the energy, close the ceremony, and put people into a different energetic space to move on to the next informal part of the celebration. So, and then I want to tell you something about that, but the other thing is making sure that that person has a room to get away to. Like wherever they're doing their celebration of life, that they have a room that they can go into and shut the door and that's it. I just, when I read that, remembered that when I just said the eulogy for my best friend Gary up in Seattle, he was a musician and really popular in the music scene and whatever. And so at the very end, his sister like gave sort of the closing remarks and, you know, we love you, Gary, and like had like some of his music on. And for, I don't know, I was like way in the back of the room, but for some reason I was like, Gary, like that. And then the guy next to me like looked at me and he's like, Gary. And then everybody stood up in the whole room and gave this like rousing round of applause, like as if he was on stage and they're going, Gary, Gary. And his sister was just bawling. And she said that it was like one of her highlights of the entire thing, which had been beautiful and quiet and loving and tearful and all the things. And then all of a sudden, everybody's on their feet cheering his name. So I just remembered that as I was reading this to you and just how powerful that was. Right. So, but we don't also always think of that because we're like, it's a memorial, it's a celebration of life, right? We're going to keep it nice and sweet. And that's another way to be sweet, is to be loud. Side note, just interestingly, when I studied mysticism, one of the things that's very interesting in like contemplative traditions is white folks tend to think that things that are contemplative are always quiet, like quiet, quiet, quiet. We're inward, we're silent, we're praying, we're meditating, we're inward. And one of my favorite professors at that school, Barbara Holmes, wrote a book called Unspeakable Joy, Contemplative Practices of the Black Church. And she talked about how Black folks in specific is very, very loud. Like it's loud, it's joyful. It's even when it's not joyful, I shouldn't have said that. It's expressive, it's big. And like, where did that come from? And then she talks about different traditions and backgrounds and where we came from. Right. So anyway, it just made me think of that too. Like contemplative practices don't have to be all quiet and inward. All right. Any questions about that, about like a memorial? Again, we'll go into ritual and you can ask again then, but even for right now, about any of the points that I just put out there, maybe sharing anything about like Vanessa and Deb, you went to that celebration of life. Did any of that feel resonant? Nobody has to talk. I just want to give that opportunity.
Deborah, why don't you talk about it? 'Cause you were kind of.
Okay, I need to learn how to use this thing. What were you saying?
That thinking about your friend's memorial celebration of life, Vanessa's high school friend, were there any of the things that I just went through or other things that came up for you that you feel like are resonant or made sense or that you really liked in that or you thought was cool or that you thought they could have done better or differently?
Yeah, I mean, like when my dad passed away, oh geez, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, when we did his shoot, it was at a Jehovah Witness church, so sort of like a memorial, but it was so different from my mom's because they had a panel and they told stories about my dad. And my uncle was there. No, my first cousin who has passed away since, who's a few years older than me, but he had bladder cancer. But they just sat and they told stories and stories and stories, and it was very uplifting and things like that. And so, but my mom, which my brother didn't really want to do it at the church, I don't know. I think he felt like when my dad passed, it was a different situation than when my mom did of support because he was an elder who he's resigned, but he was an elder who we go visit old people. We go visit the elderly. And he didn't think my mom was getting that. So it really kind of tarnished him. And so it was just a completely different like service.
Yeah.
And even with my dad, I mean, my dad, he was like a comedian. I did record stories, and I still have them on a recorder of things that happened. He could just think on the fly, get himself out of a situation that was going bad. And I really wanted to get up and tell a few things. I mean, like they don't celebrate Christmas, right? And so he was in a rehabilitation because he fell and he broke his hip playing with the recliner that threw him out of it. So he broke his hip because he took Benadryl. So Benadryl started the whole thing. And he had some elders coming to visit him. I'm like, oh, well, when they come, I'm just gonna go down the hall and I'll just, let them visit with you. And I said, they had a reef on the door and they don't celebrate Christmas, right? I said, you want me to hide that? And he's like, no, I didn't put it up. It's not mine. And I love that about him because
Mhm.
most people would have felt like, oh, you better hide that.
Mhm.
So they came, they left. I went back in and he said, they're going to pray for you. And I said, aren't they going to pray for you? Because you're the one with the Christmas decorations. And so, I loved his sense of humor and I love to joke around. And some of the things like at the one we went to in San Francisco was just that people got up and they told stories and they talked about her and things about her that were just like, who she was. Because I didn't really know her and meeting all of the high school friends. It was really nice and learning that background of Vanessa
Mhm, mhm.
and just the daughter spoke and told, just talked about her mom. I don't know. I thought it was just really nice and they like jazz music. So they had a jazz band come in, something that stood out and made me think about my mom or my dad. And still, it was a little separation because it wasn't like a close friend of mine.
Right,
So
right.
it was a little different in being present.
Yeah, that's awesome. You told us like about three like entirely different ways that people might go about this and so much reflective of like their personality, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Naomi, you had something too you were gonna say, I think.
I was just going to say that I'm going to be a bit emotional about this, but this actually brings up for me how important it is to have someone to guide you when someone dies. Because when my ex-husband died very suddenly and unexpectedly, and because it was an Islamic traditional funeral, it was taken out of our hands. So my son was the one that was dealing with the imam and the sheikh and planning the ceremony, which was all in Arabic. And that in itself was amazing. And he had some friends of of his father's to also guide him in that. But we invited people back to Abdul's home for a celebration, but there wasn't anybody guiding us. So they just came back to share food, basically, to share food and drink. And I remember I couldn't even work out what food to get. And a very close friend of mine kind of took me under her wing and said, come on, we've got to go to the supermarket. And she just filled up the shopping trolley. I just was walking in in a haze and had no idea what to do. And so we had this was a lovely afternoon, and the friends were amazingly supportive. But we never did have any of that kind of celebration of life. We never had anything where people had an opportunity to tell stories or see photos. And it's a long time ago now. It's 8 years ago. And I kind of feel a little bit sad about that we didn't have some guidance to actually kind of pull something together at the time. Yeah. So I think I'm just highlighting how important it is to have somebody to help you, to guide you, not to tell you what to do, sometimes to tell you what to do actually, but to because you can't do it by yourself. You actually can't do it, because that's my experience. I couldn't even function.
Right. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Naomi. It's so tender, and there's so many different like layers to that, with it like all being in Arabic and being like so masculinely dominated, and yeah, there's a lot to it, and how like probably beautiful and ritualistic and sacred it was on the one hand, but also like separating, like I can really feel it. And so thank you for sharing it with us. And I can tell why, I can see why you would get emotional and it would still be very close. I would also say, as like a grief specialist, that I don't think 8 years is that long ago. So just that, I just wanted to offer you that if it helps. The three things that came out most in for our work, also in Naomi's sharing, was one, that role of just advocacy. Like when she was saying someone to help you, like somebody else who's just can say, well, don't you think that you should do this? Well, how about if I do that? Well, what if I called that thing? Well, how about if we did this? What about, here are 2 different things you could do, right? Like that sort of thing is so helpful. So that idea of like advocacy is a big part of what we can do. The second piece I was going to say is there's like a thing that people say in grief, that a grocery store is like the worst place for a bereaved person. And I've had that experience. I felt like I've gone into like a panic attack going into a grocery store. There's too many things. There's too much lights. There's too much stimulation. There's too many people going about their day as if your fucking child didn't just die, or your mom didn't just die, or your ex-husband didn't just die, right? Like everyone's like going through the world as if it's normal, and it's not normal, right? So grocery stores are really hard places for people that are in acute grief. Decision fatigue is so real. And it's another thing I talk about in my grief program. Like I remember after Shanakai died, a friend of mine, I went and stayed at her house, and she said, I set up the coffee for you and it's all ready to go. All you have to do is push this button. And she put a little Post-it note. This is the button to push. And then she left me like a couple different kinds of creamers because she didn't know what I wanted, because she said, I thought you might want to get up and have coffee before you had to interact with anybody, right? So I don't have to go upstairs and ask her for the coffee. And then when I went upstairs finally, she actually said, I have 2 choices for you for breakfast, because I think that's all you can handle, or something like that. You can have berries and yogurt, or I can't remember what the other thing was. That's what I'm offering you, versus what would you like for breakfast? Which seems like a really nice and open thing to say, but just what you pointed out, Naomi, and a lot of us know, we've been in this position. You're like, what do I want for, I don't know, nothing, actually nothing. If I have to make a decision about it, the answer is nothing. And so we also will talk a lot about, we actually, in this course, we talk about feeding grieving people. So, and then the third thing, Naomi, is when you said it was a long time ago, it was 8 years ago, something I wanted to share that I have not published yet, and maybe this will be the finally thing that'll get me to publish it, is 1 year after Shanakai died, I had a witnessing ceremony. And it wasn't like a celebration of life. It was, I invited like a small group of friends, and I told them what was going to happen. You're going to come in, we're going to have a cocktail. I'm going to give you some of Shanakai's favorite snacks. I put up photos of him everywhere. And then I said, and then you're going to give me a half hour, and I'm just going to tell you about Shanakai. I'm going to tell you about him until you get a sense of who he is. And like, are you, like, they signed on for it, right? And then I said, and then at the end of it, you asked me a question about him. And then that's it. And then we ate a meal together, and everybody brought some food, and that was it. And we called it a witnessing ceremony. So they didn't even have to know him. It was me telling them. Like, it was like keeping him alive in, you know, for me and in my mind and in their mind. So I don't know how whacked out that could be for your ex-husband, maybe even just with your kids. Like, it's never too late to have a witnessing ceremony on his birthday or on some other holiday or the date of his death or whatever, and say, you know, we're all just going to get together. We're going to have a bunch of pictures of him. We're going to tell some stories. We're going to eat his favorite food. Or actually, I'm going to tell you about him. The kids are going to tell you about him. We're going to have some favorite food and that's it. Like, I feel like we should doing a lot more of this in this world too. Giving space for people to honor deaths years out. Because they're still thinking about it. Like, we change, we transform, we integrate it. But like, even my sister or my brother, I would love to have one. Like, my sister, Erin died 7 years ago. Tim died 4 years ago. Like, I would love to be like, you're coming to my house. I'm gonna tell you about Tim. Right? So I wanted to offer that to you or anybody. Carrie. Let me check.
Oh, just a quick thing to add. That's what I like about the Mexican Day of the Dead ceremony, because I feel like you can do that like once a year. There's this time when you like honor the dead and the ancestors and, talk about them and cook food for them and put up the pictures and the altars. So I
Yeah.
like that tradition from a different culture that,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's here, it's starting already. I haven't made my ofrenda yet, but I just went out to lunch and there's a huge ofrenda in the restaurant. And they're putting up the plaza. It's going to be filled with ofrendas. I do want to say though, living in Mexico, just that's not exactly the same. Like, that's just there. It's just sitting out there. So it is a way of like acknowledging that year after year, but it's also like everybody. So like the place I just went to eat, there's like 30 people on their altar. So that is super powerful. And it's not the same as having a very specific thing of, I'm going to tell you about this person. Like, I'm looking at all those photos. I don't know who they are. I just know that obviously that person liked tequila and cake because that's what's sitting on there. They like to play cards because there's cards on that table, right? So yeah, so you're right. And this is a little bit different, like a little bit more focused. Yeah, yeah, but it is pretty cool. When I make my ofrenda downstairs, I'll take a picture and send it to you. Vanessa, did you have something?
Well, I was just gonna say that two very important people in my life who have passed, that their comment about like there's not definitely not a time period. Like, I think my sister passed like 15 years ago, my grandmother almost 22, 23 years ago. And I just feel still like it still hurts. Like,
Yeah.
it's still, when I think about them, it's not, and it's changing, and I guess as I'm changing, but it's still painful.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, I think I've told you that, I definitely think of this work as a movement. And then some of my groups have called it a resistance, right? And like, really, we're bringing back like that we can continue to honor people. We continue to talk about them. We can continue to grieve. And like, when I asked people to that witnessing ceremony, they still talk about it. They were so excited. Now, like, literally after just talking to you, I was like, I think I'm going to do that for my brother, Tim, because that was one of the things that came up in my mushroom trip, was that he kind of got squished in between Erin and Shanakai. And, it doesn't have to be that it was last year. I can say this was, now 4 years ago. And I want to tell you about this person that I loved. And people like to get together and you tell them what's going to happen. I limited it to a half hour. So they knew it was just gonna be a half hour. They had to listen. Yeah. Maybe you should do it with your sister. What was your sister's name, Vanessa?
Jeannie, but we called her Erica. That was her middle name. But yeah, it's a long story. Deborah got to meet her though, and like, yeah, she's a wild child. She's definitely different. When it came into the world screaming and left the world screaming, so yeah, so her energy was very high in terms of just in all the good ways and bad ways. So
I was just going to say, it's very Latina to have your middle name be the name that you're called. So, all right, my friends. Okay, 4:30, 5:30. Let's take a break right now. Let's take a break right now because, yeah, let's take a 10-minute break and then we're going to come back and we're going to jump into our duffel bags. We're going to jump into our duffel bags. We're not actually going to jump into them. We're going to jump into talking about them. So how about a 10-minute break? See you at the top of the hour. So I forgot that I do want to hear about, most, if not all of you wrote in the document about creating your thing of beauty. What I really want to know now, just quickly from each person, was what did you do? Like, share it with all of us, but more like, what was your experience doing it? Okay, so I want to hear that from everybody, and then we'll go into, maybe this time we'll go into groups of 3, actually, just to be crazy, do something different. So yeah, Carrie, would you share about creating your thing of beauty? Just briefly tell us what you did, and then just tell us more about like your inner experience doing it.
Okay. I made a little package with like I'm kind of a collector of little things, and I have all, rocks and ceramic things I make and feathers and mushrooms and bits of this and that all over my house. And so I was like, I'm gonna make a little package of all these natural, cute little beautiful items and some made items, and put them out for somebody to find, like in like a little brown paper bag that had a stamp on it that said contains magic, from a store that I shop at called Psychic Sister. That's a dope ass store in Portland. If you're ever here, check it out, or check them out online. But like, just beautiful
will.
place.
Psychic Sister, I will definitely check that out. Okay.
Their spirit animal is the orca.
Okay. So you
Um,
just left, so it was clear that a person could take this bag.
mhm. And I put like a little postcard with a postcard stamp, like separate, and also like just like a little ritual candle with some matches, and just for somebody if they want to like write a postcard and send it, or like make a, I don't know, do some kind of like candle ritual for the dark times or something, whatever they want. I obviously put a lot of thought and meaning of my own stuff, my own like projection of what it should be, and my witchy ways, and my thoughts about what's going on in the world, and also the Samhain time, and all the this time of year. So maybe somebody will find it and just be delighted, or I was hoping that, but also somebody might just be like, what is this crap? And you know
No.
then I was sad, I'm like, what if some like mean teenage boy finds it and throws it on the ground or something? Like,
One, I doubt that would happen, but who knows? And also that's part of the releasing of
yep,
like,
just like
that's what I did. Exactly. Amazing, Carrie. Tracy, how about you? Oh, sorry. Just
Oh, that's okay. I was just getting ready to reach for something. Well, I actually got my idea from someone else. Someone else had done this. I saw this anonymous Karn that had that have a nice day. And it was during a really interesting time, a transitional time in my life that was really difficult for me. And so it just really brightened my day that this, complete stranger who just left this note. It was actually outside some apartments that I was living in at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, how sweet that someone did that. And, I left, I didn't touch it, or, so anyone going by would have seen this. So I did the same thing. I completely stole the idea from something, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. But yeah, that it had really touched me, it hit me at a time whenever, I was going through kind of a hard time. Not terrible, but yeah, a more difficult time. And so that's what I did. And I
so
was
hang on a second. I still don't understand what you did.
oh, I made a cairn,
Okay.
the pile of the rocks, and I had a little note in it with marker that said, have a nice day. Or I hope you have a nice day.
Oh, awesome. I love that. And so did it feel good to do that and think someone's going to receive?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Dina, how about you?
Yeah, I did it yesterday, and I was walking around with my friend and her dog in Brooklyn, and I was like, I gotta do this thing, we're outside. And I just started collecting little sticks, and I didn't really know what I was gonna do. And we were in this park in Crown Heights. There's like a lot of homeless people, a lot of sketch. And there were these pit bulls that were like barking at these other dogs. And anyway, I felt like, and then I just started making this mandala kind of under this little tree that had turned red. And I don't know, it was really nice. It kind of, there was a little tension that morning. So it felt really good actually doing it. And it was just interesting because it ends up looking like this beautiful, just so wholesome and nice. And there was just like all kinds of tension, like a little bit with me and then a lot in the environment. And so, yeah, it felt pretty
Just taking
good.
that time to make that beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's amazing how it can change our mind too, right?
Yeah, it made me feel good.
Yeah. Deb, how about you?
It this was a week that was like full of a lot of things and a really hard week. So I kind of
Mhm.
like was a last minute thing.
Sure.
But what I did was um started about what makes me feel good and where we live, which we live on a corner house. So we have three different directions that come right by our corner house, and it's a bus stop for elementary. And so I had people like they go on walks, they take their dogs, it's really a constant corner. And so I took this like garden, it's like a garden decoration, but of a very colorful bird. And it actually has a solar thing, like right now, I don't think it's gonna light up, but the eye of the bird could like light up if it has enough battery charge. And so it's just right at the corner that every direction that someone walks by, and I don't know, I just it was very colorful and soothing, I thought, and conversational, especially like for some of the small kids or I've never had that at the corner or any decorations outside. Just like, right, since 2003. So some of them, wow, what's this doing out here? And it's very noticeable. It's just, I don't know, that just came to me, and how much it was almost a butterfly. It was all, I mean, or a rose, but it was almost a butterfly. And I think I told that story that when my mom's identical twin passed away, she says, I'm going to be a butterfly. When you see a butterfly, I will always, that's me watching over you. And she wasn't even 60 when she passed away.
Oh, wow.
So, but I don't know, it's a bird.
Awesome. And one of the things I like about it is you said I did it very last minute because I think that we can learn. Last minute teaches us that we can do things really beautiful really quickly and that we don't always have to put like a lot of thought or effort into something that we can make beautiful. Right. So at the end of this conference, they were giving out these Palo Santo sticks, and they had them all on like a tray that had rosemary and rose petals on it. And then I had one of the trays and another girl had one of the trays, and she took all the sticks off when we were done, and then she just dumped all the petals and the rosemary into the garbage. And I was like, what did you do that for? And she's like, well, because we're leaving. What are you talking about? And I was like, let me show you what I'm talking about. And then I just took the other ones and I just put the rose petals in like a little circle and the rosemary like that. And I was like, that's what I'm talking about. It took me like 30 seconds. And so same thing, like, I don't know who's going to see that beautiful thing, but the more you do this, the easier it gets, and you just start seeing it everywhere. So hearing you actually were helpful by saying doing something at the last minute, because we can start to get that into our brains, how quickly these things can come to us and how quickly we can make them. Sometimes we make amazing ones like Carrie made with a bag full of cool stuff, but sometimes it's a beautiful, cute, colorful bird. So thank you for sharing that too. Naomi and then Vanessa.
At this time of year, there's a couple of trees in my garden that are covered in beautiful red bottle brush. And the owner of the property actually wanted to cut it all back last week. And I sent him a little text and said, please leave it because the birds and the bees and I are all loving the flowers. And so he said, oh, okay, that's fine. You let me know when you're ready for me to cut it back, because it's kind of on the driveway and scratches my car and stuff. So he was doing it for me. So I can look out one of my windows, and I often do it in the morning, and it's like heavy with birds. The birds are just loving it, the wattle-eating birds. And and I couldn't sort of think of anything to do. I stewed on this little project for a few days, and then I thought, oh, I'll just pick a bunch of the flowers, and then I walked. There's a cafe around the corner that I often go and have a coffee, and so I walked around at night, and I put the bunch of flowers in a bucket and just left it on a bench out the front of the cafe, and I was reflecting on it because part of me was wanting to see the reaction of people. That was part of it for me. Like, I thought, this is actually really hard to just let go of it and not get some satisfaction, not to get the feel-good thing that people are going to show me how they feel, or I wonder if they'll even care, or, it was, I found it quite an interesting exercise in myself in, why do I do things? Do I want to actually get something back from people? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that you mentioned that too. Like, that is such a huge part of it. And a lot of the difficult part of it is anyone going to see this? Is anyone going to care about this? What was their reaction? Were they delighted by it? And being able to let that go and just trust that they were. And that also, those then become a contemplative act for us. And whenever I'm teaching contemplation and contemplative retreats, I'm always saying we're really wanting to get into that the process of doing the thing, that was the thing. Whatever came from it is completely secondary, irrelevant. And then also, like, death, right? It's ephemeral, right? So when those mandalas, you're going to put it on the street, it's going to get blown away, right? That, maybe the bag got just blown away, right? We don't know. That's how life is. All right, and Vanessa.
So, speaking of things that get blown away, so we have like a lot of oak trees and like the big leaves, and they're orange and yellow and like different red. So we have a lot of them everywhere. And so I decided to just take a bunch of leaves and shape them in the form of a heart, and it's on our front lawn. It's still kind of there. I'm looking at it right now. So, that was it. I mean, the main thing I thought about was, oh, how big do I make this? How is it big enough? And yeah, as soon as I do this, they're going to fly away. Is anybody really going to see this because it's on our front lawn? And so, but Deborah noticed it right away, and she's like, "Oh, thanks for the heart on the front lawn." And I'm like, so,
I love that. Put one of
so
those.
that was it.
Awesome. Well, I am so glad that I hope it sounds like everyone enjoyed that activity. All these things, I encourage you to do them more. Like, don't let them be one-offs. I mean, if it interests you, like I'm like the proof of like that you do this stuff and then you're just always doing it. Like, it's always coming to your head and it's not hard. You're not really going out of your way. I mean, I grabbed that stupid little bluebird of happiness, just bring it with me, right? So, hopefully that will also be the inspiration of like how good it feels to be in that place of just beautifying, offering beauty, putting those things out into the world and not knowing what's going to happen. And I think, as Carrie or someone said And as we always say, like, we are in such an awful, awful time right now that I think every little bit of beauty, every little bit of uplifting, every little bit of connection that people can see that they're connected somehow is ultra extra powerful right now. We need all the magic possible right now. All right, well, thank you so much for doing that. Those are the two only like extra outside extracurricular activities that you have in this training. So you've now done them both. One was the writing about something, and then there was this one. All right, so right now I'm going to put you into, I think, just 2 groups of 3, just to shake it up a little bit. As always, feel free to just chat and check in a little bit, because very regulated nervous systems, feeling seen, feeling valued is a big part of what keeps us going in general, and definitely keeps us going in this kind of work. And then I want you to share what you had in your duffel bags. And you can talk about like why you had that, what you thought that was for, and all of that sort of thing. When we come back, I'm going to give you 15 minutes since you'll be in groups of 3. When we come back, then I'm just going to ask you at that point to, so when you do your duffel bag, you're going to like consolidate your lists a little bit. So if 2 people or 3 people said the same thing, then you're just going to have that be one thing. So your group then is, when you come back, you're just going to list them off. Like, you're not going to give why, what, the rationale behind. Mainly that's going to be for time, but it's also going to be because you've already talked about that in your group, and it's very possible that the other group is going to have a lot of the same kinds of things. So whichever group goes first, when you come back and report, your reporting is just going to be like a pen, a deck of cards, a bottle of perfume, like that. When you're in your groups, you're going to be fleshing it out and talking about it more. And the other thing that I'm going to do for you as well is I'm then going to send you a pretty large sampling of what other groups have said, just so that you have like even more and more and more ideas. So first we came into this by like, I'm coming into this place and I'm looking at it, and these are some things I could do. And now we're coming at a different way of saying, if I brought all these things with me, then these would be different things that I could offer to do with the person, with the family, with the community, with the friends, right? So now you're just coming at it from a little bit of a different direction. We can always, again, we assume consent, we assume partnership, we assume that we've asked, and nothing is off limits. Don't censor yourself. I've had people like come back and be like, I would have a joint in there. And I'm like, okay, like, I guess y'all live up in Seattle. Like, so like, and then I was like, I don't know that I would do that. Right. But I guess I'm bringing that was one of the most kind of nutty, I guess, like ones. So what I'm saying is, just anything that comes to your mind, just talk about it. Right. You don't have to take anything out. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put you in 2 groups of 3, and I'm going to. All right. I was on the wrong screen. Okay, was that enough time? About a right amount of time? That all worked out? Okay, awesome. So I want to hear from one person in each group, and you're just going to kind of list off what you had. I'm just going to write down the ones that like seem curious to me. And then the same thing in the other group. If there's something that you're like, ooh, we didn't think of that, and I'm curious about that one, you should write that one down too. Okay, so group 1, or one of the groups, spokesperson, please.
I'm a spokesperson, so I could.
Were you in the group with Tracy?
Oh no, I don't know groups 1. You go ahead, Tracy.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Okay. All right. Well, I will just read off. And if I forget anything, just chime in. Notebook, paper, pens, colored pencils, a speaker to play music, candle or candles, individual candles or one candle, matches so that it can be lit, tissue, oh, I can't read my own writing. I'm going to skip that one. Blanket, lotion, preferably unscented because we don't really know about any kind of scent sensitivity, herbal teas, water bottle, maybe a book of poems or children's books, hand sanitizer, prayer beads, or maybe this is my own mandala or something like that. Phone charger, something from nature, stone, feather, something that represents nature. A bowl of sand, seawater, like a bottle with some seawater. And I can't read the last thing oh, yes, I can. Eucalyptus leaves. Yeah. I was scribbling, I was in a hurry, so clearly I made some mistakes in my own handwriting trying to get it all down. But that's what I have that I can read of my own handwriting.
Awesome. I took a few notes. I'm not going to go through them
we
now,
have,
Vanessa.
like, we have
Okay.
3 questions too when it's the right time.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. And that's for that. Okay, actually, let's go to the other group. And Dina, you're the spokesperson for the other group.
I just have the list, yeah.
Okay.
Speaker, soothing music playlist, notebook pens, phone to record, candles with a mild smell, essential oils, a portable diffuser, blankets with scent, like with a scent from their house if it's not at their house, laptop to research things for the client, taking notes, books, could be favorite book of theirs, poetry book, Man's Search for Meaning, hand lotion possibly for massage for the patient, Theragun, like a massage gun, hairbrush, heating pad, digital photo slideshow thing, Oracle decks, like those cards that you pick a card, and a dog, a cute dog.
Amazing. Awesome. Okay. Does anyone have anything else to add in Dina's group? Or any of the groups that you're like, oh, but you didn't mention this and we talked about that.
I just
There we
want to
go.
ask a question. What was the thing you said with a massage gun or something? What was that?
Oh, massage guns, they're called Theraguns or they're called other things, but they like, they give you a massage and they're like shaped kind of like gun shape. But they have like real small ones too for the muscles. Theragun, yeah.
Thank you. Vanessa, the questions.
Oh, so our group, we had 3 questions. We are like, we'll just come back. And well, not in any particular order. Like, how much should we be packing for ourselves? Like, and the second one is, were you ever in a situation, or like, what do you do when there's like limited like interaction with you? Like, and like, so somebody was saying maybe I should bring a book that I can read while everybody just is there quietly. So like, what do you do when that interaction is limited? And then the final question is boundaries in this process. Like, we were talking, like, have you ever had to stay overnight? And like, what you bring looks different, and also, but and then Naomi brought up a lot of situations where volunteers got way out of their boundaries of what they should be doing or not. And so anyway, that was the last one.
Those are great questions. I'm going to start with those questions, and then I'm going to go for my couple of comments on your lists, and then we'll probably be out of time, and I'll talk about what we can bring up again next week. So, okay. So the first one, bringing stuff for yourself, is definitely a good idea. Like bringing snacks for yourself, bringing something that grounds you, bringing something that, that helps you to pass the time. I think things like books are good. They just feel like more sort of respectful and present than a phone for some reason. So I think it's really important to bring things for yourself because there is a lot of like waiting and you're just kind of waiting. And also I think it's important to, no matter how good you are, there are going to be times when something just feels really heavy, or it feels like a lot for you, or maybe you feel like you didn't do a good job with that, or you wish you would have said something different, or whatever it might be. So I think it's important that, well, one, that we have those faith practices, or we have like our practices, our contemplative practices we can go back to, but also that in the moment I can be like, I'm just going to smell this essential oil that I love. I'm just going to hold this rock. I'm just going to do this mala. So I think that's really important. When I'm having limited interactions, so having taught therapy for like decades before I started doing this, I always say that this is like the only demographic where like the person who's technically my client can definitely be the one that I see the least of. Right. So, I might be spending a lot more time with their mom or their daughter or their friends or the neighbor or the community. Right. So we'll talk about that more when we talk about systems theory. So I always want to feel like, that I'm not super hung up on whether I see that person or not, even though that's who I want to see and that's what I'm signed on for. And I love developing those relationships. But depending on where you are in the process, it can also be the person that you see the least of. It's also the one thing that I do where I really, for me, I allow myself to be very flexible. Because if I'm like, okay, I'm going to come back next Thursday at 2:00. And then next Thursday at 2:00, there's a crisis, or next Thursday at 2:00, they're getting bathed or whatever, right? That I have to have a little bit more sort of flexibility with my presence. And that then brings me into boundaries and what is overstepping of a boundary. So I'll tell you something that my friend Gary, who I just mentioned, that we went, yay, Gary. There was this woman that he knew, and now this is me. She pushed herself into being his like death doula. But it was actually really interesting to watch because I was just like, oh my God, this person could not work more differently than I. And also I thought was out of bounds like so many times. I mean, I bitched and kvetched to her about her to another friend of mine who was also taking really good care about this woman all the time because she did all kinds of weird things, even down to like, I don't want to get it totally wrong. She did something that was marginally legal, like getting someone to sign something that was like, she's like, well, we talked about this and this is what Gary wants. And we were like, he isn't an attorney, like that. You are so far outside of your bounds, right? So the problem is, and we'll also talk about this a lot, is there is no scope of practice. This is a completely unregulated field. So as I said to you, maybe I read a book this summer called The Collected Regrets of Clover. And it was like an okay book. Okay, you read that too, Carrie. I was like, whatever. It was like very fluffy. But one of the things that I found troubling about it was like, I just didn't buy it. I was like, well, where does she get all these clients? And it seems like her job as a death doula, quote unquote, is literally just showing up at the moment of a person's death. Whereas my idea of a death doula is someone who is there as a companion and present all through an entire process. So because we don't have one regulated scope of practice, really the term death doula is meaningless and the profession can be like whatever. So we all will come up with our own scope of practice. We will work on this in a few sessions. And then we'll also look at, we'll look at the meaning of scope of practice and then look at what some of us can do in our scope of practice and some of us cannot do. Like I might include it in because I'm willing to do that. And someone else might not include that because they're not willing to do that. And then there might be things that like, I'm definitely not going to do that. Or like I had someone on my last cohort, she was an attorney and an immigration attorney and a mental health counselor. And she was Mexican American. And so we talked about for her, she could like advise people legally or like not really advise, but like bring them the paperwork that they needed to have or tell them like, this is something you should look into from her lawyering practice, but she can't really act as that person's lawyer. So she can't then be like really advising them or going deep into their stuff with them. So there's a lot about that we have to figure out both together eventually as a field, and then each one of us looking deep at our own integrity and what we think this work is going to mean to us. The other piece is that, and even for me, like it's the one thing I still don't have on my website that I told myself I'd finish this summer is like, what do I actually do as an end of life care companion? I have what I do as a trainer, but I don't have anything on there that I actually do it myself. Right. So that then would help me to write a scope of practice. This is what I can do, or I will do, or I'm willing to do, or I'm capable of doing in that setting. So that's going to be different for everybody. And even when people ask me how much I charge, how long do I see people for? Do I go in once a week? Do I go in every day? All of those kinds of things. Those are all like up for grabs, honestly. For me, if it was a friend, like I would stay overnight at their house. And I think I even told, I don't know if it was you, but I was even saying that, like, I really wish that the last night I had stayed with my best friend, that I would have asked him if I could sleep in his bed. And we never had that relationship. So I didn't think to ask him. And it's like, oh, I wish I had stayed in the bed with him. I would have wanted to be that close to him. But if it was a friend, I would stay there with them, especially if they needed me. Me as in a professional setting, I do not stay overnight with you. And as a matter of fact, with Burns, I thought she was going to die and it was coming up on Christmas and I really wanted to go see my family. And I felt this real like, do I stay? Do I like a birth doula? Like you're signed on to be there at the birth. Death is so much more nebulous about when it's going to happen, that at the end of the day, for me in that situation, I decided it was not good for me to stay. I didn't know when she was going to die. I didn't know how long this was going to go on. I really wanted to see my parents. So I left and I said, if she dies, actually she was there. So if you die while I'm gone, talking to her husband, this is what you do. You're going to do this, you can call me. Right. And then I gave them a whole list of what they were to do when he died. And when I left Gary's house, because he had a shit death doula, I did the same thing. I made a whole checklist. When he dies, this is what you should do. So, yeah, so it's very individual what people are doing, both in terms of the individual person, them where they were trained from, and then also what in their mind is a death doula, because it's not a thing, and it is a thing. That's why I say, like I've told you way early on, I never say death doula, and yet I promote like death doula because I live in a capitalist society, which I realized that people weren't understanding the course they were taking with me unless I said death doula. But for me, I like to say end of life companion because that's really what I feel like I am. I'm a person who will accompany you all the way through this process. Are those sufficient answers? Do they feel answered? Okay. Awesome. All right, so we got just 3 minutes left. That's totally fine. So I'm just, for right now, I'm just going to look at a few of these things that will take me less than 3 minutes, and then we'll return to this obviously next week. So you said like colored pens, and notebooks and stuff. So I just said like art projects in general, things to do in general, things for families to do, things for kids to do. You can be that person that's like, I've got this card game. I've got this. Some of my students have talked about like little bead making kits that they bring in and they can make beads with the family or with the kids. Baking projects. People talked about like slice and bake cookies, just like stuff that you can do. I also think about the dying person might want to write notes or letters to like their caregivers or their friends, but also caregivers and friends might want to leave notes for the dying person or for one another. So I like to have all of that stuff around, right? Art stores are my friend. Candles, it's also good to think about those fake candles that you just turn on in case a person doesn't want candles in their house, or in a hospital, you definitely cannot have candles. So it's nice to think about having those as well. Chocolate. High quality chocolate. Like everybody loves chocolate unless they don't, but most people like chocolate. I think about like high quality, like beautiful chocolate. And that is just such an upper for most people. Now, sometimes people say, well, you know, high quality chocolate, they can be really expensive. But what I say is remember that in the end, if you're doing this as a profession and you're thinking about your pricing, you're building all that in. So if I'm buying an $18 chocolate bar that is intended for me to give the family is the one that's paying for that $18 chocolate bar, right? So really high quality things like that are really special. And of course, for kids, you could just have candy. Nature, yes, and I have not stressed that enough yet. The natural world is our portal to God, right? Our natural, in a secular world, in a religious world, in all of the ways, nature is what people will connect with and acknowledge is this thing that feels awe-inspiring in some way. So as much as we can either get the person into the natural world or bring the natural world to them, I think that's what we should be doing. So water features, I love the idea of salt water from the ocean, sand, trees, plants, flowers, rocks, just things that are from the natural world. I was curious about eucalyptus leaves, Tracy, or her group.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
her-
go ahead.
That was Naomi who had brought that up.
Oh, Naomi, tell me
So
about eucalyptus.
happened. I love
guess-
I love the smell, but like so when she brought that up, I was like, oh, I love that smell. So anyway.
Totally.
And I guess that's because of where I'm from. Like I'm surrounded by eucalypts here, and eucalypts is, and I'm not going to speak on anyone's behalf because I don't know the traditions, but I know that there are particular eucalypts that the Indigenous people use in their smoking ceremonies here.
Oh, wow. Mhm.
So I would never do that. That's another culture's practice. But I guess I'm just saying that because they're recognised as being significant. And for me, when you crush a eucalyptus leaf, the smell is just, I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. I didn't know if it was something otherwise specific. That's fantastic. So what that makes me think about is two things, like ceremonial kinds of things. Like again, right, it's in your tool bag, it's in your duffel. So it doesn't mean that you're going to bring this to everybody. If they're like, get that witchy shit out of my house, right? Then you're not going to do that, right? Or they're like, oh, Palo Santo, bleh, right? So ritual things are really nice to have with you. And then also good smelling things are really nice to have with you. And I know that lots of people have different kinds of sensitivities. Obviously, we all know that. But one thing I would say is that investing in very high quality essential oils makes all the difference in the world as well. So, and again, you're like high quality essential oils. I'm talking sometimes like 30, 40, $50 for like a little tiny vial. But again, that's like your cost of your profession that is getting passed on to your client. I know it feels really cheesy to say, but those are going to have less potential of people being like, oh God, that gives me a headache, or I don't like the way that smells, right? Lots of times that's what people don't like is they don't know it, but it's like a chemical or a processed thing. So smelly things are good. I'm going to take tiny gifts and note cards off for today. Okay. So the last three things I'll say really quickly is some kind of like, people said notebooks. So I'm thinking, I don't know exactly what the notebook is for, but I think you should have a notebook. So one thing I would suggest is like a notebook for people to write notes to each other, right? I gave them the medicine at this time. She didn't want to eat. They had a small bit of yogurt. The grandparent came over. So-and-so is coming later. That sort of thing is really helpful. Lots of people in their end of life care plans that I've worked on with them too want a whiteboard in their room so they can see what's happening, and people can leave a note for them on that whiteboard, or they can leave a note on the whiteboard. I'll tell you something quickly about Gary. When I was up there with him, at one point, he turned to me, he's like, what is this calendar everyone keeps talking about? And I was like, I don't know. I hear them talking about it too. I'll ask your sister. And the death doula had like set up this calendar of visitors, but guess who she didn't include on the calendar of visitors? Gary. So she's like, I'll figure this out. And I was like, oh, no. Like, how many people do you think you can realistically see a day? And he said, 2. And I said, for how long each? Half an hour. Okay, great. Who do you want to see? And then we made a calendar. And then I said to his sister, there is no calendar being made that Gary is not looking at. It's a grown man with all of his faculties, right? So having things be transparent is really important. And a whiteboard is a good way to do that. Whiteboard. And then the last thing is just thinking about things about hygiene. And some of you said some of that, but like brush, comb, nail clippers, tweezers, just like those little things that people like, it just bugs you and you need to have that thing. I would have that. Some people have talked about like toothbrushes. I would, and now I'll have to stop. But then one other thing I'd say is those little teeny tiny sponges that are like a little, they're on a little stick and they're a little tiny sponge on the end of it. You know what I'm talking about? Have you seen those? Or no? You see them you can find them at the pharmacy. They're just like a little stick with a teeny weeny sponge on it.
For mouth
So
care, you mean?
What'd you say?
You mean for mouth care?
Yes.
Is that what you're referring
Yeah, a
to?
mouth swab. Yep, exactly. So I can tell you as a speech pathologist who used to, one of my jobs in the hospital was making sure people were safe to swallow. Those little mouth swabs, if you dip it into a liquid and then you and pull the liquid off, there's no danger. So you can swab someone's mouth and you can make them comfortable. Mouths that are not eating get disgusting really fast, like gross to them and also to you. For me, it was a flex when I was younger to clean a person's mouth out. It's not a flex now. And then that also makes me think of chapstick. Just your mouth is so dry all the time. So I'm going to stop with that.
Oh, I was just going to say, even at the hospital where we're supposed to be doing that for the patients, the staff do not do it enough. And it's still kind of a flex, even in the hospital.
Yeah.
Like if you do your patient's mouth care, like.
Right, exactly. But to me, why it's not a flex anymore, and probably for you too, because for me as a human being, if I can give relief to another human being and the only blockage to that is my ew factor, then I'm like, I got to get over it. Got to get over it. At least I do. There's nothing I wouldn't do in the ick, just out of ick, if it really was going to make a person go from miserable to content. My mom taught us early on, I still say this to her, you always said, hands are washable. Like I can wash my hands, brush my teeth, I'm done. And they're like happy. So, okay, my friends, we're 7:06. I'm sorry, I kept you 6 minutes over. So I don't have any homework to tell you about right now. So everything will come in the regular email situation. Next week is going to be our 7th session. So we are halfway through. So there will be some things on your questions for consideration about just reflecting on what we've learned so far and what you want to make sure we're going to get to. And we probably are, but I always like people to tell me. All right.
Thank
Okay,
you.
awesome. Naomi, have a great day. And everybody else have a great night. I'll see you next week.
you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye, guys.